What is up, best ones worldwide? It's the best one, DBTV here, best one Donnie, back with a brand new video. Today, I'm going to be giving you guys my NBA 2024 playoff predictions, and I'm going to let you guys know who I have winning the championship. I really like to do this for the playoffs because I do love looking back at some of my older predictions just to see where I can learn, where I'm wrong, where I'm right. But I feel like if there's a season that the playoffs can go anywhere, it's definitely this season. And unfortunately, my Brooklyn Nets, we didn't make the playoffs, and it's been a very depressing time for us Brooklyn Net fans. But we're still going to be giving you guys my predictions. So with that being said, let's get it. Alright, so starting things off, we're going to begin this with the Western Conference. And we have the 1-seeded Oklahoma City Thunder versus the 8-seeded New Orleans Pelicans. Not going to lie to you guys, I kind of wish that the Sacramento Kings won that game. But unfortunately, the Pelicans, they got away with it without Zion. I think the series would be a lot more interesting if Zion was healthy. I don't know if he is returning to this series or not. But a lot of people are underestimating OKC because they are very inexperienced. They are the 1 seed. And this playoffs in the Western Conference, from the 3rd seed all the way to 10, they were based off 1 or 2 games, which is absolutely crazy to me. But if I had to pick a winner here, I'm going to have to go with OKC in... I'm going to go OKC in 5. I'm sorry, Pelican fans. I just think that Shea is just going to dominate in this series. I think if Zion's healthy, I think this could go to 6 or 7, but I just don't think the Pelicans really have enough to beat OKC. So now, moving on now to one of my favorite series in the first round of the NBA playoffs. We have the 4th-seeded LA Clippers going against the 5th-seeded Dallas Mavericks, and 2 very good teams. The Clippers, they are all in right now with Paul George, Kawhi Leonard, Russell Westbrook, and James Harden. While the Dallas Mavericks, Luka Doncic, he finally got some help with Kyrie Irving. And the Mavs, they have been doing really good post-All-Star. So this one can go either or. I cannot stand the Clippers. I can't stand Kawhi. I can't stand James Harden. And I think that the Mavs are going to win this series in 7. I think that the Clippers, what's going to cost them this series is James Harden. Yes, he had a good first game, and I do apologize for not getting you guys these predictions out before the playoffs. There's just been a lot of things going on. He had one lucky game. I don't see him being consistent throughout the rest of this series, especially against somebody like Luka and Kyrie, who Kyrie used to cook Harden back in Brooklyn, all right? But I think the Mavs, they just had one bad game. Imagine them, they're going to start hitting them shots throughout this series. They're known for making buckets, so I'm going to have to go Mavs in 7. But moving on now to the next. Ooh, this one right here is definitely my favorite series right now that's happening. We have the 3rd-seeded Minnesota Timberwolves versus the 6th-seeded Phoenix Suns. And I predicted it when the Suns traded for Bradley Beal to form a big 3 with him, Devin Booker, and Kevin Durant. I knew right away that the Phoenix Suns made a huge mistake. Devin Booker, he is always going to be a superstar. He's a very solid player. Love Booker's game. I love Kevin Durant's game. But I just don't see Bradley. He just doesn't fit the team. Because at the end of the day, Devin Booker, his primary position is shooting guard. And with Bradley Beal, that's also his primary position as well. And I don't know what it is with the Suns. I feel like they just need that facilitating playmaker. They need a Lonzo-type player on their team. And I think them getting rid of Chris Paul was definitely a huge mistake, even though he is starting to decline in age. But Minnesota, man, they are playing. And I think a lot of people don't realize that this team that the Wolves have are pretty good, and a lot of people are underestimating them going into the beginning of the season because they didn't really make any big moves in free agency. And a lot of people forget that last year in the first round, when they played the Denver Nuggets, I think 2 or 3 of their starters were out. Jaden McDaniels had an injury, and he was out of the series. During this time, Gobert was struggling. Towns and him just couldn't play well together. Anthony Edwards, he has drastically improved from last season to this season. Even though he was an all-star last season, this season he's become a superstar. And there's a difference between a superstar and an all-star. And this series is very entertaining. It's a fun one. I'm going to have to go with Minnesota in 6. I don't see the Phoenix Suns beating them. Anthony Edwards is here to play. The Timberwolves, they have depth. Something that the Suns really are struggling to have because they just spend all their freaking money. So I got Timberwolves in 6. Moving on now to the next series here. The 2-seeded Denver Nuggets versus the 7-seeded Los Angeles Lakers. And a lot of people have the Lakers pulling an upset. I'm sorry to break all the Los Angeles Lakers' hearts. I'm sorry to break all the LeBron fans' hearts. But you guys do not have enough to beat the Denver Nuggets, which is why I am going to go with Nuggets in 5. I just think that D'Angelo Russell is just not ready. He's not ready for the spotlight. He struggled in game 1, and he also struggled last year against this team. The Nuggets, they are a championship squad. They have depth, underrated bench, great starting 5 that just play so well together. And at the end of the day, it's pretty much Jamal Murray or D'Angelo Russell who's going to play better. And I think Jamal Murray's going to play better than him throughout this series. And Jokic, man, he is just on a whole nother level. I think he is probably the best center right now in today's NBA. And I just think that LeBron and AD, they need more help. I think Austin Reeves is overrated. D'Angelo Russell's a good player, but he's just very inconsistent. And the Lakers, they just love to get these one-year rentals, and that's it. They really don't have a culture. And at this point, if I'm a LeBron fan, I would be hoping that the King leaves Los Angeles because I feel like he would be way better off on a new team. I think the Lakers, they have done a horrible job giving LeBron the right pieces, horrible trades they've made. I think that LeBron, especially towards the end of his career, he deserves better. I would rather see LeBron back in South Beach with the Miami Heat. He needs a guy like Jimmy Butler. Or I would love to go see him in Cleveland. He could play with somebody like Donovan Mitchell. That's what LeBron is missing. Anthony Davis also deserves a lot better as well. He has been healthy throughout the season, but I just don't think AD and LeBron, they really have enough to win, especially against the Nuggets. They're always beating them. So I don't know why Laker fans are just in their heads thinking that it's going to be our time. We're going to pull the upset. I'm sorry, it's not going to happen. Nuggets in 5. LeBron will go off and probably drop 50 in one game. All right, let's get to the Eastern Conference now. So we have the 1-seeded Celtics versus the 8-seeded Miami Heat, and I'm going to go Celtics in 4. And I think it's going to be a sweep because, unfortunately, the Miami Heat do have some injuries here. Jimmy Butler, he is out, and he is their number 1 option. He is their superstar. He is the one that literally carried this Miami Heat team to the NBA Finals last year, coming out of the play-in. I wish Jimmy Butler was healthy because this would be a competitive series that can definitely go either way, but I feel like Miami has low-key regressed from last season to this season. Even though Tyler Hero's healthy this time around, because obviously last postseason he was out, I just think that the Heat losing Max Strus in free agency, Gabe Vincent, two very underrated role players on their team, definitely didn't help them. Plus, in the offseason, they weren't focused on signing free agents because they thought that they were going to get Damian Lillard, which the Milwaukee Bucks, they swept right under the rug and got him. So I think, unfortunately, Miami, this year is not your year. They really need to start making some risky moves. They really need to. But we got Celtics in 4. Moving on now, we have the 4th-seeded Cleveland Cavaliers versus the 5th-seeded Orlando Magic. A lot of people aren't excited about this series. I'm actually looking forward to this series because these are two teams that are very young, great defensive teams as well, and especially with Cleveland choking against the New York Knicks under the bright lights, I think that them going against an inexperienced playoff team like the Orlando Magic will build that confidence up for Cleveland because I think the talent is there. They have a depth roster, and I think that they just need to get the experience. And I think for them, this is a great way to build some confidence, especially with the Celtics advancing into the second round. But I think that this will be good for Orlando as well. They're definitely going to be learning a lot throughout this series. I think it's time that we start putting some respect on Pablo Banchero's name and Franz Wagner. I think they both are great young players, and I think the Magic, they definitely have a bright future. They just need to add more veterans to this roster because they definitely have the young assets. But in this series here, I'm going to have to go Cleveland in... Cleveland in, I want to say 6, but I'm going to go 5. I think Cleveland's going to beat the Magic because Donovan Mitchell. I think Donovan Mitchell is the best player in this series. And I think that Cleveland, they're really going to build up that confidence from this. And I think that we're going to get a really competitive second round. But we'll get into that in a few minutes. All right, so now let's get down here. We have the 3rd-seeded Milwaukee Bucks versus the 6th-seeded Indiana Pacers. I know Giannis is going to be out for a little bit of the series, and a lot of people are erasing the Bucks from this. And I think they forget that they still have a lot of their championship core members. They still have Brook Lopez, who could still give you good games. Bobby Portis Jr., Chris Middleton. I think Middleton's going to have a great series in this. Nobody's talking about him. And then we get playoff Dame. And Damian Lillard already cooked in freaking... Damian Lillard literally already... Action. Damian Lillard already cooked in game 1. And Pascal Siakam, he did win a championship with the Raptors, so he does have that experience. But their point guard, Tyrese Halliburton, I think he's a fantastic player. He is going to be a future superstar in this league. The Pacers are going to be scary in a couple years, but I think that Damian Lillard, he's been there before. He's done it. So I am going to have to go with Milwaukee in this series I'm going to go 5. And there's a lot of people out there that think the Pacers are winning this series. I think that they forget about some of those underrated pieces that they do have. And I think guys like Chris Middleton, Bobby Portis, Brook Lopez, they're going to step up to the plate while Giannis is recovering from his injury. Alrighty, let's see here. And our last series we have here in the first round, we have the 2-seeded New York Knicks versus the 7-seeded Philadelphia 76ers. And these are two teams I absolutely hate. Philadelphia 76ers, they always get bullshit calls. They always friggin' beat the Brooklyn Nets when it comes to playoffs and big games. And they even took James Harden even left to go over to Philly, and there's a rivalry there. New York Knicks, obviously, Battle of New York. But I will say what the New York Knicks have done this season, I gotta give credit where it's due. They are having a great season. Jalen Brunson's becoming a superstar over there. DiVincenzo becoming a consistent shooter. Josh Hart just being one of the best role players right now in the league. Miles McBride off the bench, great piece. Hartenstein, he's doing really good. Mitchell Robinson playing good. The Knicks have a very deep roster, and especially in today's NBA, I am not sleeping on the Knicks. I think that even though they are a couple pieces away from actually winning a championship, I think there's no way they lose this series to Philadelphia. So I am going to have to go with the Knicks in 6. And I just think Embiid, he's also not healthy as well. So that's also another factor that we do have to consider when it's all said and done. I just think that New York, they are a deep team, and I don't know. I can't sleep on them. But now let's get into round number 2. Let's go back to the Western Conference here. We have the 1-seeded Oklahoma City Thunder versus the 5th-seeded Dallas Mavericks. And this one is going to be very interesting to see what happens here. And I think, oh man, this is going to be a bold prediction. The Thunder, they're a great team, but I think this is where the experience isn't going to pay off for them. And I think maybe in a couple years, they'll get over the second round hump. But I am going to have to go Dallas in... I'm going to go Dallas in 6. I think that Luka and Kyrie, they are going to demolish this Oklahoma City Thunder defense. And I think we're going to be getting a good series with Lively and Gafford. I think that they're going to play good, and they're going to hold their own against Chet. I also think with the Dallas Mavericks, the one thing that they're going to be able to do is expose Josh Giddey. I think Josh Giddey is going to choke in some capacity in this series with the Mavs. I do love what OKC has done, and they are next when it comes to a dynasty. I will call it like it is, but I think Luka Doncic, this is where he's going to prove that he deserves to be the MVP. And I might be a little biased because I do love me some Luka Doncic, but I think the Mavs are going to win in 6. But now let's go down to the second round in the Western Conference here. We also do have the 3rd-seeded Minnesota Timberwolves versus the 2-seeded Denver Nuggets. This right here is probably going to be my favorite series in the playoffs. I think that this is a perfect matchup. And also, you do have to consider the fact that after the Denver Nuggets won a championship, they were asked what was their hardest series. And they admitted that it was the Minnesota Timberwolves. And imagine the Timberwolves actually had a healthy squad going into that series with Jaden McDaniels, who's one of the most underrated perimeter defenders in the league. And especially right now with Anthony Edwards playing at an all-time high, Karl Anthony Towns and Gobert actually coexisting. I think, this is going to be a tough one because going into the season, I thought the Denver Nuggets, they were going to go back-to-back. But I really think if Karl Anthony Towns, if Rudy Gobert, and the Minnesota Timberwolves squad is healthy, I think Gobert and Towns could stop Jokic. You can have Towns, you can do a zone defense, you can have Towns guard the top of the paint with Jokic, and you can have Gobert guard the down low. And especially with that wingspan of Gobert, he is a multi-time defensive player of the year in this league. Man, and especially with Edwards, I think that he's going to outplay Jamal Murray in this. I'm going Minnesota. And I think I'm going to go Minnesota in 7 in this series. I think that we are going to witness history here. I think Anthony Edwards, he is ready now. And we're really starting to see a brand new superstar in this league. And I think next year, Anthony Edwards, he's going to be in MVP talks. I really believe the hype when it comes to him. And especially in that first game, something that I learned was he loves being under pressure. And going against Kevin Durant, he was out there just matching him. And I think the same thing's going to happen here with Denver. It's going to be a great competitive series. I could see it going either or, but if I have to pick, I'm going to have the upset. I think the Minnesota Timberwolves are going to beat the Nuggets. So now let's get into the Eastern Conference. We have the 1-seeded Boston Celtics going against the 4th-seeded Cleveland Cavaliers. I think that this is going to be a competitive series, but when it's all said and done, I don't think the Cavs are going to be able to stop Tatum and Brown, so that's why I am going to be going Celtics in 5. And I really do hope the Cleveland Cavaliers do win this series against Boston. I would love to see that upset. The last thing I want, because I live in the New England area, I live in the Boston area, I do not want the Boston Celtics to win the championship this year. I do not want that to happen. Please, please, please do not let it happen. And whatever team friggin' beats them, I will buy a jersey of their best player, I swear. Just because that's how much I hate the Celtics. Alright, moving down here now to our next series. We have, in the second round, the 3rd-seeded Milwaukee Bucks versus the 2nd-seeded New York Knicks. And this one is going to be a tough one because the Knicks, I think, are a very deep team. But I think by the second round, Giannis will be back. He will be healthy. And I'm trying to think who... Oh, they do have OG Anunoby. I can't remember. Oh, man, damn. But then you got Chris Middle... Damn, I'm sorry, New York. I hate both your teams. But I am going to say Milwaukee is going to win this series in... I'm going to go 6. I think Milwaukee will beat the Knicks in this. Because if you do stop Giannis, then you have to worry about Middleton. You have to worry about Damian Lillard. And even though Brunson, I think, is going to give you good nights, he needs another... Batman always had Robin. That's what Jalen Brunson needs. They have great role players. They have a deep roster. But if they can just get one all-star to pair up Brunson with that's not Julius Randle, I think that the Knicks, man, they could really win a championship in a couple years. And that's coming from a Brooklyn Nets fan, so you guys already know I'm not being biased in this situation. Alright, so now, guys, we have the Western Conference Finals. We have the 5th-seeded Dallas Mavericks going against the 3rd-seeded Minnesota Timberwolves. And, man, this is going to be a good series here. Luka versus Edwards. And I'm going to have to go with Minnesota. I think their defense is going to be able to beat Dallas. And I'm going to go Minnesota in... Especially with Kyrie's injury records when it comes to playoffs, which I hope Kyrie stays healthy. I'm going to go Timberwolves in 5. I think Minnesota is going to beat the Mavs. I think the defense is going to be a little too much for them. And I feel like the Mavs, they're going to go into the offseason and they're going to get some names. And I think they're going to really be a contender next season. But I think Minnesota right now, if they can keep a whole healthy squad, they're going all the way to the finals. That's my opinion. Now let's go down here to the Eastern Conference. We have the 1-seeded Celtics versus the 3rd-seeded Milwaukee Bucks. And as much as I would rather Milwaukee beat the Celtics, I think Boston, they just have a great starting 5. And they'll probably be healthy. Giannis, he's, not going to be fully 100% coming back from his injury. And I think the Celtics, they really have enough to stop Giannis, so I am going to be going Celtics in 6. This will be their toughest series yet, in my opinion. Alright, so for the NBA Finals, I have the 3rd-seeded Minnesota Timberwolves going against the 1-seeded Boston Celtics. I think that this is going to be a great finals matchup. And I think the Celtics, they are going to choke yet again. I think Edwards, he's getting his first ring. And I'm going to go Minnesota in 7. That's what I think is going to happen, guys. I think Minnesota is going to win the championship this season. I think they had an incredible regular season. And just overall, dude, Minnesota, they have depth. They have Naz Reid, who, in my opinion, I think that he is the 6th man of the year. I think Anthony Edwards, he's right now breaking out. He is becoming the next big superstar in this league. Also, Karl Anthony Towns, he's starting to find his mojo. Rudy Gobert is actually playing well finally in Minnesota because last season he had a horrible season. And he's finally starting to find his groove. Jaden McDaniels, very underrated player. Then we also have Alexander Walker. I think he's going to be a great role player for them. Mike Conley, a veteran that's been there, done it, hasn't got the championship yet. I think when it's all said and done, I think the Minnesota Timberwolves are going to be your 2024 champions. And I really hope it does happen because that is the team I'm actually rooting for in this playoff since my Brooklyn Nets didn't make it. Let me know in the comment section below your predictions for this NBA playoffs. I really do want to hear what you guys think. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to smash that like button now. And I would tell you guys to subscribe, but I'm not posting consistently here on the channel. I might be doing more car videos throughout free agency in the summertime. I just have a lot of things going on. Once I can make YouTube a full-time job, then I might consider doing DBTV again. I just have a lot under my plate. There's only so much time in a day. But to all the best ones out there worldwide, we are taking over. Peace.
I hope you're ready for the comeback. Steve Nash, I'm about to bring the sun back.